Have you ever looked back and wondered if the moments you were most praised for were the ones that mattered least? Time has a way of sorting our days, putting shine on what was hollow and quiet light on what was true. For Richard Coleman, December was always loud. At 74, he was the sort of billionaire everyone in the city knew, or thought they knew. His name shone on hospital wings and museum plaques. Every Christmas, the news called his charity gala an emotional message of the season. Cameras flashed, choirs sang, and trucks rolled out loaded with toys. Before we continue, if you love stories that warm your heart and awaken emotions that help you to become a better person, be sure to subscribe to this channel and show your love by liking the video. If you enjoy it, share a story with us, one that filled your heart with joy and emotion. It might inspire our next video. It looked like an emotional history, but in the quiet of his penthouse, when the suit was back on its hanger and the lights were off, Richard sometimes felt empty. That morning, the warehouse smelled of new plastic, cardboard, and the faint sweetness of candy canes. Forklifts beeped softly. Volunteers in red Santa hats moved boxes marked with neat black letters, dolls, puzzles, trucks, books. Richard walked slowly along the rows, his cane ticking lightly on the concrete floor. Age had softened his stride, but sharpened his memory. He wore a dark wool coat and a scarf his late wife Helen had knitted years ago, the last Christmas before the diagnosis. He never spent a December without it. His assistant Mark walked at his side, tablet in hand. "This year's numbers are our best yet, Mr. Coleman. We'll reach more families than ever. The press is already calling it your greatest Christmas." "Numbers," Richard murmured. "Always numbers." "What was that, sir?" "Nothing, Mark. Just an old man talking to himself." They turned a corner. That was when he saw it. A single box sat apart from the others, half in shadow near the wall. No label, no barcode, just a plain, slightly worn cardboard box with a strip of older tape across the top. Richard stopped. "What's that one?" he asked. Mark glanced over. "Probably a misprint or old stock. We can toss it onto one of the donation pallets." Before Richard could answer, a small voice floated from behind a tower of stuffed animals. "Don't donate that!" They both turned. A little girl stepped into view, perhaps 8 years old, with a red knit hat pulled low over her ears and a coat a size too big. Her cheeks were pink from the cold. She clutched a small ragged teddy bear in one hand. "Lily!" someone called from the volunteer table. "Stay close, honey!" But Lily Brooks didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the plain box in the corner. Richard studied her gently. "Why not, sweetheart? Every box here is going to help someone." She shook her head slowly, eyes wide. Not rude, just certain. "That one's different," she said. "You can't give that away. If you do, someone's heart will break." The warehouse noise seemed to fade. The forklifts, the chatter, even the Christmas carols playing from a speaker felt suddenly distant. Richard's hand tightened around his cane. He had built a life on decisions made quickly. But this time, an old man in a warehouse full of brand new things paused, because of a little girl's quiet warning. And somewhere, beneath the smell of cardboard and pine, a forgotten memory began to stir. Some boxes carry toys, some carry memories, and some, hidden in plain sight, carry the pieces of a life we forgot to honor. Richard stared at the little girl Lily, her small, gloved hand still pointing toward the plain box. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't guessing. She knew something. Mark cleared his throat nervously. "Mr. Coleman, she's just a kid, probably curious. We should keep moving." But Lily stepped closer, shaking her head with quiet conviction. "My mommy told me to stay out of other people's business," she said softly. "But sometimes you gotta say something if it saves someone from hurting." Her words hung in the air. Simple, but filled with the kind of truth only a child could deliver without fear. Richard approached the box slowly, cane tapping. The cardboard felt softer than the others, older. He pressed a palm on top. Dust rose like a small sigh from the past. "Did you open this?" he asked Lily gently. She shook her head. "No, sir. I felt something, like it wasn't a present at all." The exciting story was just beginning. Richard crouched with effort, the stiffness in his knees reminding him of his age. He lifted the box slightly. It was light, almost too light to be toys. "Mark," he said quietly, "bring me a knife." Mark hesitated. "Sir, we don't have time for this. The media team is arriving in less than an hour." Richard gave him a look, the kind of look only a man who lived long, lost much, and learned deeply could give. "We make time for what matters." Reluctantly, Mark handed him a small box cutter. Richard sliced through the tape. It peeled away with a faint crackle, soft as unwrapping an old memory. When he folded the flaps back, he froze. Inside wasn't plastic, or toys, or books. It was a stack of letters tied with faded Christmas ribbon, a small wooden music box, a locket, a child's snow globe with a tiny cracked base, and a sealed envelope labeled, in careful script, "For Rick, Christmas 1993. Richard's breath vanished. Helen's handwriting. The world around him blurred. The volunteers, the forklifts, the scattered ornaments, all fading into silence. Lily stepped closer. "See? It's not for other people." Richard lifted the envelope with trembling fingers. Tears pressed behind his eyes. "These were hers," he whispered. "My Helen. These were—" His voice broke. Lily placed a small hand on his sleeve, gentle as snowfall. "You shouldn't give away things that belong to your heart." His cane slipped slightly as he stood, clutching the envelope to his chest. Mark's face shifted from annoyance to worry. "Mr. Coleman." "Sir, I didn't know." "No one did," Richard said softly. "I didn't even know these survived." He looked down at the little girl. "Lily, thank you." She smiled, shy, innocent, unaware she had just changed the direction of a billionaire's entire Christmas charity. Richard closed the box carefully. Whatever secrets it carried, whatever memories Helen had left behind, he would face them. And for the first time in many years, he felt something warm stirring inside him. A Christmas truth waiting to be rediscovered. Some memories arrive late. Others arrive exactly when we need them, even if they make the heart tremble. Richard carried the box into his office inside the warehouse, closing the door gently behind him. The noise of volunteers faded, replaced by the soft hum of fluorescent lights. He placed the box on his desk with reverence, like something sacred. Helen's handwriting stared back at him from the envelope labeled, "For Rick, Christmas 1993. She had been gone for 15 years, and yet here she was, whispering across time. His hands were not steady when he opened it. Inside was a folded letter and a pressed sprig of holly, still faintly green. The faint scent of lavender, Helen's perfume, seemed to rise as he unfolded the paper. He read, "My dear Rick, if you're reading this, then somehow this little box made its way to you. I hope it found you when your heart needed it most. I know you're busy, building, leading, giving, but sometimes I wonder if you remember to let yourself be loved. This box holds pieces of the life we built, the parts that mattered more than the cameras and the crowds. If I'm gone, please, Rick, don't forget the small places, the quiet families, the unseen children. They needed your heart far more than your money. With love, Helen." Richard pressed the letter to his lips, eyes burning. A knock at the door startled him. It was Lily again, her teddy bear under her arm. "Mister, you forgot your scarf. It fell." Richard managed a trembling smile. Thank you, sweetheart. She stepped inside timidly. Did the box have something important? Richard nodded. Yes, something very important. Lily tilted her head. Is it a memory that touches the heart? He let out a soft breath, half a laugh, half a sob. Yes, exactly that. She walked closer, eyes wide at the objects inside. My mom says memories are like snowflakes. Each one lands in the heart differently. Richard swallowed hard. Your mother sounds very wise. Lily nodded proudly. She tries. He hesitated, then asked softly, Lily, why did you notice this box? The girl shrugged. Because everyone was looking at the shiny ones, but sometimes the boxes that look lonely are the ones that matter most. Her innocence struck him deeper than any speech. Richard looked back at Helen's letter. Lily, he whispered, I think you just helped me find something I've lost for a long time. What is it? Myself. Some sounds do not age. They wait quietly, tucked inside wooden lids and forgotten drawers, until the right hands open them again. Richard lifted the small music box from the cardboard nest. Its wood was worn smooth by Helen's fingers. The tiny painted snowflakes were chipped at the edges, and the crank was tarnished but intact. Lily stood beside him on her tiptoes. Does it still work? I don't know, Richard whispered. He turned the crank gently. It resisted at first, stiff from years of stillness, then loosened with a soft click. A fragile melody drifted out. Silent night, slow, trembling, beautiful. The sound hit Richard like a wave. He was suddenly back in their old living room decades ago. Helen decorating the tree, humming along, his son Michael falling asleep on the sofa, the soft glow of Christmas lights reflecting in her eyes. He closed his eyes, the melody pulling him through the years. Lily pressed a hand to her chest. It's pretty. It was her favorite, Richard said. They sat quietly, letting the exciting music fill the room. The melody slowed, wavered and faded, like a memory slipping away. Richard wiped his eyes discreetly. Lily, could you give me a moment? She nodded and slipped out, closing the door softly. Richard opened the rest of the letters. They were addressed to him but never sent. One for Christmas 1994, one for 1995, another for the year she got sick. Each one spoke of gratitude, longing, concern that he was losing himself in public charity while forgetting private compassion. One line struck him. Money can fill shelves, Rick, but only love fills hearts. He leaned back in his chair, breath trembling. He thought of the news cameras, the staged photos, the perfectly stacked pallets of gifts, all the grand gestures he had assumed created change. Had he been giving or performing? He didn't have long to reflect. Another knock. This time it was Mark, his voice tense. Sir, we may have a problem. There's an issue with the donation routes. Richard looked up sharply. What kind of issue? Mark hesitated. Some of the gifts you donated last year never made it to the shelters. A cold dread cut through Richard's chest. How many? Mark swallowed. Thousands. Maybe more. Richard stood slowly. The melody of Silent Night still echoed faintly in the room. Soft, honest, painful. Helen had been right. Something had gone terribly wrong, and Lily had saved him from repeating the same mistake. Some truths hide in silence, others hide in numbers, and some hide in plain sight, waiting for a moment or a little girl to reveal them. Richard felt the weight of Mark's words settle in his chest like winter frost. Thousands of gifts missing, not lost, misplaced. And in charity work, misplaced was a word people used when they didn't want to say another, stolen. Show me, Richard said quietly. Mark led him through the warehouse to a desk cluttered with clipboards, delivery maps, and scribbled notes. A computer screen glowed with spreadsheets of donation routes. "These are last year's records," Mark explained. "Everything looked perfect. But when I dug deeper, the numbers don't add up. Entire shipments were checked in but never checked out, and some shelters reported receiving only half the pallets assigned." Richard's jaw tightened. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Mark hesitated. "Sir, people are afraid to question your programs. They thought you approved the changes." Richard felt a sharp stab in his chest, not physical, but emotional. He had built an entire empire of giving, yet somehow he had grown distant from the very heart of it. He clicked through the files, frowning. Some route signatures were sloppy, unfamiliar. Some dates didn't match. He saw one name appear repeatedly in the delivery logs, Harold Sutter. It meant nothing to him. "Who is this?" Richard asked. "One of the logistics managers," Mark said. "Started working for the foundation about 3 years ago." Richard's eyes narrowed. 3 years. That's when Helen's boxes were archived. A chill ran through him. He clicked one more document, an internal memo about redirecting unused inventory to a private distribution center. But the location listed wasn't a shelter. It wasn't even a charity site. It was a rented warehouse on the edge of town. Richard felt the fury rise. Slow, cold, controlled. "Get the car," he said. "We're going." Before Mark could respond, a small knock interrupted them. Lily peeked around the corner. "Mr. Rick, are you okay?" Richard's expression softened instantly. "Come in, sweetheart." She approached timidly, her little boots leaving wet footprints on the concrete. "I heard people saying something's wrong," she said. "Is it about the gifts that are supposed to help people?" Richard exhaled slowly. This child, this fragile voice, was sharper than any board member he'd had. "Yes," he said gently. "Something is wrong, and I'm going to fix it." Lily nodded as if she'd expected that answer. "Good. 'Cause Christmas should make hearts feel safe." Her words struck him deeper than she could ever understand. As she walked back to her mother, Richard turned to Mark. "Let's go," he said. "It's time to see where the gifts really went." Outside, the snow fell harder, as if the truth itself was waiting in the storm. Some roads become clearer in a storm. Snow has a way of stripping the world down to what truly matters: the truth, the heart, the steps we choose to take. The wind had picked up by the time Richard and Mark stepped outside. Snowflakes whipped sideways, stinging their faces. The chauffeur tried to hide his concern as he opened the car door. "Are you sure about driving in this weather, Mr. Coleman?" Richard tightened his scarf, Helen's scarf. "Yes, this can't wait." The car moved slowly through the blinding white. Christmas lights blurred behind the drifting snow, turning the world into a watercolor of red and gold. Richard stared out the window, his mind racing, thousands of missing gifts. Helen's letters urging him toward compassion, not spectacle. A child's warning saving a billionaire from repeating a hollow pattern. And somewhere in the heart of the storm, answers. The GPS directions led them through the outskirts of town. Abandoned lots, old factories, quiet alleys blanketed in untouched snow. Finally, they approached a large, windowless building with a crooked sign barely visible through the flurries. "Sutter Storage and Freight." Richard felt his jaw clench. "Harold Sutter," he murmured. "Of course." When the car stopped, the chauffeur hesitated. "I can wait out front." "No," Richard said. "Come inside. All of us." They stepped into the freezing air, trudging through knee-high snow toward the metal door. Mark knocked once. No answer. He knocked again, harder. Finally, footsteps echoed from inside, and the door creaked open just enough for a man's face to appear. Mid-40s, thick coat, hard eyes. Harold Sutter. He froze when he saw Richard. "Mr. Coleman, sir. I didn't expect..." Richard pushed the door fully open with the tip of his cane. "I'm sure you didn't." Inside, the place was dimly lit. Cold, dusty. But what chilled Richard wasn't the air. It was the sight of hundreds of boxes stacked along the walls. Boxes with his foundation's labels still on them. Boxes marked for shelters, hospitals, children's homes. Boxes that never made it. Richard walked forward slowly, the sound of his cane echoing through the vast space. "How long?" he asked quietly. Harold swallowed hard. "Look, it's not what you think." "It is exactly what I think," Richard said, voice steady. "You stole from my foundation, from families, from children who needed hope." Harold's face tightened. "They were just excess, unused inventory." "Unused?" Richard's voice cracked with anger and grief. "Children went without toys, shelters went without blankets, and you call that unused?" Mark stood behind him, stunned. Richard lifted one of the boxes and brushed the snow off its label. "This," he said softly, "was supposed to go to a family shelter 2 streets over from where Lily Brooks lives." Harold flinched at the name. Richard's eyes narrowed. "You know who she is." A guilty silence filled the warehouse. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, the truth finally showed its face. And Richard Coleman, tired, grieving, rediscovering his heart, realized this wasn't just about missing gifts. It was about regaining the meaning of giving. Some truths don't break us. They break us open. Harold's silence hung heavy in the cold warehouse. The dim lights flickered, as if even they were ashamed of the secrets held within the walls. Richard stepped closer, cane tapping on the concrete. "Why did you flinch when I said her name? Lily Brooks." Harold swallowed hard. Because she's one of the kids who was supposed to get these gifts last year." Richard froze, a knot twisted in his stomach. "Explain." Harold rubbed a hand over his face. "Her family is struggling. Her mom works 2 jobs, diner and night cleaning. Her dad left. They barely make rent. Last year their building was on the donation list. But he faltered. Richard's voice sharpened. "But you what?" "I redirected the shipment." Harold looked away. "I was selling some of the items, not all, but enough to keep things running, to line your pockets," Richard said bitterly. Harold didn't deny it. Richard felt something inside him fracture. Not with anger, but with heartbreak. Helen's letters echoed in his mind. "Look closer, Rick. The ones who need the most are often the ones you never see." He turned toward Mark. "We're going to fix this, tonight." Mark nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." But as they headed toward the exit, the storm outside intensified, wind howling like a warning. Snow swirled violently against the warehouse door. Richard paused. "Before we leave, I want the address." Harold blinked. "What address?" "Lily's family," Richard said firmly. "I want to see them." Harold hesitated, then scribbled an address on a scrap of cardboard, shame weighing down every motion. Richard tucked it into his coat. As they stepped outside into the blizzard, the chauffeur tried to shield him from the wind, but Richard held up a hand. "No, let me feel this. I've been warm for too long." The car pushed through the storm, inching forward with painful slowness until they reached a narrow block of aging apartment buildings. Lights flickered in some windows. Others were dark and cold. Richard's breath caught. He recognized this neighborhood. He had driven past it for years, never noticing its stories. The car stopped near a dimly lit doorway. "That's her building," Mark said softly. Richard nodded. "Let's go." He stepped into the snow, gripping the cane as wind whipped at his coat. Each step felt heavier, as if he were walking not through snow, but through years of missed chances. He climbed the icy stairs and knocked on the door. It opened slowly. Lily's mother stood there, tired eyes, apron still on, hair pulled back from a long shift. When she saw him, her breath hitched. "Mr. Coleman," she whispered, stunned. Before Richard could speak, a small voice floated from behind her. "Mom, is that the nice man from the warehouse?" Lily appeared, teddy bear in her arms. Richard felt his heart break open again. "Hello, Lily," he said softly. "May I come in?" Some rooms speak without words, and sometimes silence tells the entire story. Lily's mother, Grace Brooks, hesitated only a moment before stepping aside. "Please, come in." Richard entered the small apartment slowly, taking in the worn carpet, the flickering Christmas lights wrapped around a tiny, sparse tree, and the faint smell of hot chocolate, though he sensed it was made from the last packet in the cupboard. Grace wiped her hands nervously on her apron. I wasn't expecting someone like you." Richard gave a gentle smile. "I wasn't expecting to be here." Lily tugged on his sleeve and led him toward the kitchen. "Come see. I want to show you something." He followed, each step heavy with curiosity and dread. The kitchen was spotless but barren. A single ornament hung from a drawer knob. Paper, hand-painted, edges curling. "Mom says we still decorate even if it's small," Lily said proudly. Richard swallowed the knot in his throat. "It's beautiful." Grace appeared behind them, voice soft. "It's all we could manage this year." Richard glanced at the countertop. Only 2 mugs, a single plate drying by the sink. The fridge hummed quietly in the corner. Lily opened it eagerly, as children often do, expecting something good inside. But it was mostly empty. A carton of eggs with 2 left, half a jug of milk, a small stick of butter, cold air and space. Richard turned away quickly before they could see the pain in his eyes. He had given millions to charity galas, millions to PR campaigns, millions to programs that looked good on paper. Yet here, in a small apartment 2 streets from his distribution center, a child had an empty fridge, a child who had saved him from donating away the 1 box containing his wife's heart. Grace spoke quietly behind him. "We were supposed to receive help last year, but nothing came. Lily, she kept asking when Santa's charity trucks would arrive." Lily's voice chimed in softly. "But it's okay. Mom said Christmas isn't about getting things. It's about remembering we still have each other." Her teddy bear slipped from her arm and hit the floor with a soft thud. Richard felt something collapse inside him, something proud, blind, and long overdue. He knelt down to Lily's height. "Lily, I'm so sorry," he whispered. She smiled gently. "Why? You didn't do anything wrong." But he had. By not looking closely, by trusting the wrong people, by forgetting Helen's gentle reminders. Richard stood slowly and turned to Grace. "You didn't get what you were promised," he said quietly. "But I intend to fix that. Starting tonight." Grace blinked in confusion. "Tonight?" Richard nodded. Then he reached into his coat and placed Helen's music box on their small kitchen table. "This belonged to someone who believed Christmas was meant to be shared," he said softly. "And she would want it to start here." Lily gasped. "Does it play?" Richard turned the crank. Silent night filled the room, trembling, tender, healing. And for the first time that evening, the little apartment felt full. Some miracles don't fall from the sky. Sometimes they arrive in vans, in kindness, and in the hands of people finally learning how to see. Richard stepped back from Lily's kitchen table, the melody of Silent Night still echoing softly. Grace wiped her eyes discreetly. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, hypnotized by the music box's turning lights and gentle notes. Richard tapped his cane lightly against the tile. "Grace," he said softly, "may I ask you something?" She looked up. "Of course. Are you working tonight?" Her cheeks reddened. I have a shift at the diner. I'd normally be home, but we need the extra hours. I can't afford to—" "You don't have to explain," Richard said tenderly. "You're doing everything you can." He pulled out his phone. "Mark," he said, "call the warehouse. I want every honest volunteer we have, every driver, every helper, every one of our good people, and tell them to bring the keys to the trucks." Mark blinked. "All of them?" "All of them," Richard repeated firmly. "Tonight, we're delivering every missing gift ourselves." Within minutes, the apartment's quiet evening turned into a whirlwind of headlights and shadows moving outside the window. Trucks pulled up along the narrow street, engines humming like a Christmas choir warming up. Neighbors peeked from windows, then stepped outside in disbelief. Grace covered her mouth. "Mr. Coleman, what are you doing?" "Fixing what was broken," he said, "starting here." He walked outside into the icy wind. Snow swirled around him like confetti. Volunteers formed a line, unloading box after box, stamped with Coleman Christmas Foundation. Richard raised his voice. "These gifts were meant for you, all of you, and they were taken, hidden, stolen." He paused, letting the words settle. "But not tonight. Tonight, they go exactly where they were meant to go." A cheer rippled through the crowd, soft at first, then rising like warm light. Lily watched from the stairs, eyes glowing. Families gathered along the sidewalk, receiving warm blankets, toys, books, coats, grocery boxes, things long overdue, but deeply needed. A small boy hugged a fire truck toy as if it were gold. An elderly woman cried quietly over a new coat. A father whispered, "Thank you," with cracked lips and trembling hands. By midnight, the snowy street glowed with warmth and laughter, a Christmas spirit restored. At the edge of it all stood Lily, her teddy bear tucked under her arm. She walked up to Richard and held his hand. "You fixed Christmas," she whispered. Richard shook his head gently. "No, sweetheart, you did." Snow drifted around them, gentle as forgiveness. Every Christmas leaves us something. A memory, a lesson, a light. Some gifts are left wrapped in forgotten boxes, waiting for the right hands, the right night, the right heart. Back home, after the deliveries were complete and the volunteers had said their goodbyes, Richard returned to the warehouse office. The plain cardboard box, Helen's box, still sat on the desk where he left it. He closed the door, letting the silence settle. He opened the box one last time. Letters, the music box, the locket. He picked up the locket delicately. Its gold was faded, but its clasp still clicked softly. Inside was a photo he remembered well, a young Richard and Helen standing in front of their first Christmas tree, her smile brighter than the lights behind them. Under the locket lay one more envelope, small, thin, unopened. "For Rick. Open when you've forgotten what Christmas means." His breath caught. Hands trembling, he tore it open. Helen's words flowed like warm light. "My love, if this letter has found you, it means life has gotten loud again. It means you have forgotten, even for a moment, the quiet places where kindness grows. Christmas is not the gala. It is not the speeches. It is the single mother working 2 jobs. It is the lonely child with only one toy. It is the little girl who notices the box everyone else ignores. It is love, real, simple, imperfect, shared. If you ever doubt what to do, look for the smallest light. It will guide you home. Helen." Richard pressed the letter to his heart, and for the first time in years, he cried with the softness of a man finally letting go. He understood now. He had spent decades giving things. Helen wanted him to give himself. The next morning, Christmas morning, Richard returned to Lily's building. He knocked on the door, carrying the wooden music box carefully in both hands. Lily opened it, beaming. "Mr. Rick." He knelt. "This belonged to someone very special, and she would want you to have it." Lily gasped. "But it's yours." He shook his head, smiling through tears. No, sweetheart. It's ours. Grace stood behind her, eyes glistening. Mr. Coleman, we can't accept something so precious. Yes, you can, Richard said, because your daughter saved a part of my heart last night. He stood slowly. And I intend to spend the rest of my life giving the way Helen asked me to. Quietly. Personally. Truly. Lily hugged him tightly. Warm, small, real. As he walked back down the snowy hallway, her voice followed him softly. Merry Christmas, Mr. Rick. He looked back. Merry Christmas, Lily. And for the first time in a long time, he felt Helen walking beside him.